Welcome to a football show already in progress there. I'm not sure what happened with the internet, but welcome to the show. That is Paul Kuharsky. I am Braden Gall, and we are brought to you by Sinkers Beverages each and every Monday at 3 p.m. Central Standard God's Time on the YouTube page, the podcast app, of course, as soon as the show is done, Twitter and Facebook. Please share, rate, review, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And give us a thumbs up on YouTube if you want, and you can jump into the comment section as well. Paul, how was your off week, my guy?
It wasn't much. Was not much of an off week at all, but we'll take what we can get. And, it was a nice weekend. Watch some ball, watch the Yanks get off to that nice 1-0 lead. Got to see Simon practice, which is a treat at this point, and right back at it. So, everything's good. It's football season. You don't expect to have much time off. So there will come a time where I'm like, boy, I could use a weekend off, but
I had 9U soccer in Columbia, Tennessee on Sunday, which took up a large portion of the day, considering it's about an hour plus drive from our house. And so I didn't really see much of any of the noon games. Like we had a noon game and then a 1 o'clock game. Didn't get back to like 3:45, 4 o'clock. So it took up a big chunk of my Sunday. Glad the Titans were off, actually, Paul.
I expected Buffalo to bounce back. I think I read Mike Sando today, who was forgiving of the clock management at the end of that game. I don't think it was the clock management so much because there were timeouts there that could have stopped the clock if they had run. The thing you needed was more space for the punter to be able to boom it to get some extra yards there to make Houston have to do more. Look, Houston was given a path to win that game, and Houston took the path and won that game. That's good growth for Houston. I think the Bills are still pretty good. I'm suspicious of the concussion, speed of the concussion check there on Josh Allen. I wonder if that'll be investigated. I still think Buffalo can be pretty good. I think they should probably do some shopping for missing parts to get in it. But I think there's a pretty decent 4-pack there with Kansas City, which hasn't played well yet, with Baltimore that's shown it can be pretty authoritative, with Houston and with Buffalo. So if that's a top 4 in the AFC, I think we're in for some pretty compelling football. And shockingly, I liked, and my whole family liked, Houston's alternative uniform. I did. I liked the H. I thought a matte helmet would have looked better, and I don't like the sticky numbers. But I thought it was not a bad look overall for a team that had to invent an alternate thing because it doesn't have a throwback.
See, you said so much smart and logical.
And then I ended badly.
So much smart, logical stuff about so much stuff that you saw over the weekend. Really good analysis there of the concussion, undiagnosed concussion. All the stuff. Just even got a playoff baseball mention in there. Yes, that's right, JT. The Mets are still kicking, although I think we might have lost the entire series, giving up the game the way we did yesterday, of course.
A lot of momentum the other way right now.
Yeah, and then you end up with, yes, I really like these Arena League uniforms. They seem really cool. So I just thought they were ugly.
I like the H.
All right. It's okay.
I think that H is better than the bull.
Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I will say
the bull. The H? To separate the H from the uniform.
If the H was, I could be on board with the H if it was like a different color palette. Like if it goes back to I don't know. I think they
isn't that color palette echoing Love You Blue a little bit?
They to me, what they have is like some good ideas inside bad ideas every step of the way. You know what I mean? Like I like some of their regular uniform, not all of it. I like some of the thing that they did yesterday, but not all of it. It's like they have a couple of good ideas, but they're not all together ever at the same time. So
I just allowed myself to be initially moved, and I didn't move off of it.
Paul Kuharsky gets emotional over third uniforms. I appreciate that. All right, stuff we're going to get to today. You're going to hear from Brian Callahan a couple of different times today. He had some comments, give us an update on Will Levis's shoulder if you didn't see that at the press conference, and then we'll talk about some of the adjustments. He went out of his way, I thought, very, again, in his sort of typical honest fashion at the beginning of the year, to say, look, week 1 is a liar. You don't really know who your team is. It takes a few weeks, not just 1 or 2, but sometimes 3 or 4 weeks. But then you have to be flexible. You have to adapt, and you have to pivot off stuff that doesn't work. And this is the time to do it after 4 weeks, 3 bad losses, a bye week, heading into a couple of critical months of football. This would be the time to change some stuff. So we'll see what he had to say about that. And then I want to hear from you, Paul, about what you want to see this team do in terms of changes moving forward. We'll look at the next 4 weeks, kind of looking through the lens of the Miami game. what was real from that game and what was not. What can people bank on? What can they build on? And what was sort of a function of maybe the situation? We'll get into that, and then maybe take a look at the AFC South after 1 month, sort of what we got right, what we got wrong, and sort of what the changes might be. Obviously, Joe Flacco throwing for 400 yards, not something we all anticipated happening for the Indianapolis Colts. So lots of stuff to get to today on the show. However, before we do any of that, football show is brought to you by Sinkers Beverages, of course, 3-time liquor store of the year in East Nashville. Sign up for the in-crowd. Follow them on the socials. You know the whole entire drill. They've got absolutely outstanding selections and knowledge about everything in the store, whether it's bourbon, whether you need a good gift. My brother-in-law just had a baby. I had to go swing by and pick up a bottle of bourbon for him. Got to give him a gift there. The wife's planning family and friends coming over the course of the next few months. All kinds of different occasions. Got to have a good bottle of wine. I have no idea what to pick out there. They went and helped me out. Sinkers Beverages will help me out every step of the way. And, of course, serving the community for almost 40 years. Good local business. Support good local business. Sister store, Bluegrass Beverages up in Hendersonville, serving that community and market for over 50 years. And while I have forced family vacation because of Metro Schools, Paul, this week, we will have all of our shows later on, and we'll have a little announcement for you when Nick and I get together on Thursday. How about that? Sound good?
Sounds very exciting. I hope I'm able to listen.
There you go. Little announcement coming for you guys on Thursday's episode. That is 9 a.m. Stoney on Thursday mornings live. Of course, myself, Nick Suss from the Tennessean, one of the smarter thinkers on the beat, and glad to have him on board. So, okay, paulkuharsky.com is the website. Make sure you check that out. And all Paul Kuharsky podcasts can be found on the Paul Kuharsky YouTube page. I think I've said your name 3 times, Paul. I think that's the rule.
That's when the magic happens.
That's the rule. All right, let's hear from Brian Callahan. First on Will Levis, an update on his shoulder and where the quarterback is at right now.
Yeah, it's going to be a process during the week of getting comfortable. I mean, it's not going to be probably not going to be pain free. I mean, it's just the nature of a throwing shoulder injury, and you do your best to manage it. And as long as he feels he can do his job, then he's going to go do it. And it's going to be like every player right now. They're all dealing with something. Some of it's more impactful than others, but everyone's dealing with something they're playing through, and he'll be playing through it.
I went on to ask him if it kind of gives him an out like he had in Miami, where if things aren't going well and he's a little bit sore, if it kind of, can be like Miami. And he said, no, if he's out there and he's, playing through it, if nothing's going wrong with it, if he's not injuring it further, he's out there. But I do think it does give him an out. I do think, if he runs, if he's tackled, if he's hit, they can always say he's aggravated it to some degree. This is an easier path for them to remove Will Levis from games now than if there's nothing. Obviously, they don't have to pull him for performance. They can pull him for performance/shoulder issues and get to a safer, quote unquote, safer place with Mason Rudolph if the game shape is correct and they don't need aerial feats in order to get back into a game. I think they have some quarterback flexibility kind of as a silver lining of this injury.
For lack of a better term, it gives them cover. It gives them cover to make the change if and when they want to, even if it's just for temporary purposes and for temporary situations. And here's the other thing, like the Colts, and I was going to get into this a little bit later on, but one of the things about the Colts, like they defensively have not done much of anything at this point. One of the worst rushing defenses in the NFL. They're giving up almost 25 points a game, which is among the worst in the NFL. They're giving up 6 yards a play on defense, which is, I think, 30th in the NFL. Like this should be a moment at home for Will Levis with 2 weeks, even if he's banged up, to find some space to operate.
Yeah. I mean, the Colts, this should be a nice matchup, right? I mean, the Colts have a somewhat explosive offense that can hurt you, but it's not extraordinarily dynamic with the playmakers that they roll out. Richardson is a hit or miss guy. If you can minimize the hits and maximize the misses, if he's out there. If it's Flacco, do you want to add Flacco to the list of guys that you've lost to? I mean, that should be a manageable. I think you should like this Titans defense against whichever direction the Colts are going offensively. Taylor's been hurt. They pride themselves on stopping the run. They did so in Miami much more efficiently. They get Simmons back, which should help. some of their guys. If the Miami game is real or playing better, we're going to get into some of that. And then offensively, like you're saying, the defense is not good. And so the Titans should be able to run, should be able to get some things going in the passing game off of the run, which is how they want to do it. I think it's a good matchup. I haven't liked the Colts from day one. I had the Titans finishing third in this division ahead of the Colts. I don't believe in the Colts. I think the Colts have a lot of middling players. I think Chris Ballard has had a long leash there without adding a lot. They keep re-signing their own guys, some of whom are plus players, but none of whom are really superstars. I don't really like their roster. I think the Titans are a more talented team virtually across the board than the Colts are.
Don't hear that very often, but I like that. Ed says, here's a question going back to Levis and the cover of the decision making to leave him in or not. Ed says, do you think Amy Adams-Strunk has enough awareness to realize that pulling Levis would do more harm to a fan base clinging to any hope for answers at quarterback?
I don't think she's. I think that she does maybe pull some strings macro. Like off season kind of thematically. I don't think she's a in-season meddler with a coach that she hired and loves who's 5 games into his season.
And why would you want your owner? I mean, this is sort of my question back to Ed, which is, sure, she might have plenty of awareness of the look and the optics of how it might look if Levis plays poorly, and then Brian Callahan pulls him out, and whether or not we can figure out whether that's injury related or performance related, we'll never really know. They're going to say injury no matter what, unless it's so bad that it's obvious that he's healthy and playing poorly. She's not like, what is she? She's not Jera. She's not on the phone at like halftime in the locker room being like, "Hey, Brian, can you do something about the quarterback?" Like, she's not. I don't know. I'm with you. I don't think Amy Adams-Strunk has anything to do with this. And as I said on the show last week, Brian Callahan has no loyalty to anyone that was drafted before he got here. In theory. So I don't. He's gonna play whoever gives him the best chance to win.
Yeah, and if she were, and this is completely hypothetical because I don't think she's meddling on this level at all.
Yeah.
But if she were to, and she's not calling down on the weekend, they have a Monday conversation. If in a Monday conversation she's starting to say something about the quarterbacks, he's saying, "Hey, look at the right side of that line." That's where our concern is. Look at that. I need to do better, he said today. I'm trying to figure some things out about what I'm calling and how I'm calling them. And it's taking me longer than I would have liked, but we're in this for the long haul. All of that stuff. She can be silly and tempestuous in some instances, but I don't think there's anything going on with Amy Adams-Strunk here.
I don't either. I think it's much to do about, like, we all know that the stadium's coming and they're trying to sell tickets, and people are sort of saying, look, I've seen the product. I may not want to invest all that money in a PSL. That's all stuff she has to worry about. I don't think it has anything to do with what they're deciding on the field. You hire a coach, you let him do his job, whatever that might.
And by the way, stadium wise, and I don't know if I believe this or not, and I wouldn't put it past them to be lying at this, but they're selling it stage by stage. And the first stage of the seats is those primo locales, 50-yard line, the 20s in, and maybe one deck up. And on the, map that they send out of saying, well, now we're on to the 20s and out lower bowl with maybe the primo upper deck, right at the 50-yard line. Well, it says they're sold out of those primary seats. Now, I don't know if that's a marketing ploy, and I talk to a lot of people who go in for their visits and talk about the pricing and are telling me about the pricing, but their public indication isn't like, hey, come in and look at this new thing and what's left over from the first thing. Their public indication is come in and look at this second stage. The first stage is done. Which is conceivable. There's big money in Nashville. And, the product, and I think you've said this, Braden, the product right now to a lot of us in our financial stratosphere would lead us not to go spend a huge percentage of our salaries on tickets. But the product right now for people who are in that stratosphere might not have a lot to do with buying NFL tickets, not Titans tickets, but NFL tickets, where the Packers and the Chiefs and, the Jets and everybody are passing through your city on a regular basis. You hope your team is good, but what's coming through there is going to be an NFL product every Sunday.
Yeah. So my example is purely anecdotal. I've talked to a few folks that have had season tickets for a long time, and they both use the sort of, I've seen the product, I'm not re-upping. I think that's totally anecdotal. I think it's case by case, and I think you're absolutely right. There's too many people in this city that view, and again, I agree, it's folks that are in the top tax bracket, not even folks that do well, but folks that are above that.
Very well.
Who are looking at, again, club seats for the Titans games currently for a pack of 4 is like $16,000 to $18,000. There's not many quote unquote regular fans that can afford that anyway. And that's at the old building, the way it's currently constructed. Right. So
this is a social status thing.
Yes.
As much as it is the seats we're talking about now, anyway, as much as it is a paint my face blue. I'm a diehard. These aren't the mosh pit fans that we're talking about, though I know one of them too.
They sit in the 300s and they don't live in Davidson County. Ed, here's a question. Ed says this. She did a lot. It's talking about Amy again. Ed, she's doing a lot to promote Levis in the offseason. So questioning how tied she is to him. Here's the thing. When she sent it, I think a lot of folks have mentioned the letter that she wrote as soon as they got rid of Vrabel. She kind of put in that letter to the fans, basically saying, we've got all this cap space, we've got draft picks, we've got a new organization, and we found our quarterback. Like, she kind of put that all in a letter when I think she made the move to fire Vrabel. And ultimately, like, what do you, and I'm not picking on you, Ed, but like, she has to spin no matter what.
That's what you say at that time. That's not Levis's name. It's a young quarterback that we are giving every opportunity to.
Yep. And I agree with Chef Rand here that the team, no matter what happens with Levis, if Brian Callahan's the guy and Rand Carthon's the guy, the team will be significantly better in 2027. Like, that's how this league works.
That's so far off on an NFL calendar. You could still, they're not, but you could still be flipping regime between now and then and be fine.
It's possible. Yeah. The game, look at the Houston Texans and the Jacksonville Jaguars. They have switched spots in a matter of like 14 months. So
it can happen fast. Now, the Titans curse is that it doesn't happen fast for them.
Fair enough.
Right.
The question
is, one of those DNA things that you don't like, but
I don't have a problem with it. They don't. You're talking about the audience.
I'm confusing you two with Rexrod. Rexrod hates my DNA thinking that there are so many things that have lasted. Tell me what you think about it. There are so many things that have lasted through multiple regimes here that I argue they are in the fabric of the uniforms and the turf and all of that. The fact that they can't find a quarterback, the fact that only now do they have decent receivers and they still can't throw the ball yet, right? A lot of these things, the tendency towards 8-8, or what's going to be the equivalent of 8-8 now, that the league is built for, but the Titans plug into hard and fast. These things are Titans DNA elements. I know it sounds ridiculous, but if you've been around it from the beginning and they default to it so hard and fast, it feels like it's the fabric of the franchise.
I love the idea that the inability to find receivers in a passing game and a quarterback is built into the turf. I think that's a fantastic line. Generally speaking, if you and Rexrod are disagreeing, I'm going to automatically side with Rexrod. But I think the facts are on your side here with this one. Now, I think his basic point is correct, that like nothing that happened in 2002 or 2007 should have anything to do with the way. I
would generally agree.
Right. That should have anything to do
with
it.
But I'm bearing witness to it.
Look, you've been there all the time through all of it. So you've got the skins on the wall.
Right. How does Jeff Fisher's style of play through all that's happened since then translate to Brian effing Callahan in week 4 of 2024? I don't know, but there's a strain of thread that does. I believe
maybe there's like a Disney movie where they have to come down and like peel off the turf and find out what monsters are living underneath the turf at Nissan Stadium.
Maybe destroying the building will have something to do with it. Who knows? At every increment, there's something that could change it. And time and time again, we're hopeful that it changes. But time and time again, guess what happened? It doesn't change.
Well, Brian Callahan is hoping to change some things in his first season coming off the bye week. How about that? You like that? Brian Callahan, of course, said to us at the beginning of the year, You can't really know who your team is before the season starts, or even in one game. It takes not just 1 or 2 games, but 3 or 4 games, and you have to be willing to adapt. You have to be flexible, and you have to pivot off what does not work. He did that as the coordinator with Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. He's alluded to it and explained it multiple times. Of course, if you're going to go through a 1-3 start with a quarterback who's got some growing pains, difficult losses in the first 3 weeks, you got a bye week. You're about to head into your first division game with a lot of division games left on the schedule. This would be a perfect time to fully grasp who your team is and be flexible and adaptable and pivot off of what doesn't work. You asked this question of Brian Callahan today at the press conference, and here was his answer.
There's a couple of things. I think a lot of it more just things that I can probably do better. Certain calls and certain spots. It's really more. It's a small sample size at this point. Still, you'd love to have 6, 7 games behind it, but through 4 games, there's definitely things that I think we can improve on. Some things that I can do better to help our offense. There's a couple of schematic things that you shift around and tweak and maybe try to lean into more. Obviously, not going to tell you those things at this moment, but we feel pretty good about what we learned about our team through the first month and what direction we're going to head from here. I feel pretty good about it.
Some interesting messaging there, Paul, where he says, I feel pretty good about it. I like what we've learned about our team, but I still need 3 or 4 more games maybe to do so. That's an interesting message. But he wouldn't tell you, of course, not that we expect him to, what those changes, what those tweaks are. Nick Suss from the Tennessean on Thursday's episode of the Football Show last week, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages, said that one of the things he wants to see is leaning into the hero ball from Will Levis a little bit more, taking more shots down the field. If he's going to be this type of player, maybe lean into it and try to use it to your advantage a little bit. When you heard that answer, what were your thoughts on what he should be pivoting away from and maybe embracing more of?
Well, my overall feeling about what he says there, I don't disagree that he needs more time, but it's a disappointment that he needs more time. Things, and by things, I mean people have not presented themselves enough to him, and that's a concern. Things and people being primarily the quarterback, who I think's been limited somewhat by the scheme. He's been limited a lot by the protection. So those right side guys in particular haven't presented themselves enough. Ridley's had some key drops and moments, but the play calling he's self-indicting there a little bit, Callahan, and correctly so. They've not accommodated their top weapon enough, which is a mistake. Then you ask him about Westbrook-Akine, who has not been presented, still not targeted, right? Through a quarter of the season, he's not targeted enough, and they're sticking too much with Burks. They're not letting NWI present himself. They're not giving him chances. They're giving Burks too much of a chance. That's them being slow. They need to have looked at film of Burks, know his limitations, understand the reputation was deserved. They're over-chancing him and under-chancing somebody else. So I think some guys not presenting themselves enough, some guys being given too much of a chance to present, some guys not being given enough a chance to present. But it's really, as it usually is in my eyes, and correctly so, a people issue. Now, they added a lot of people. All right. Bill Callahan not having enough of an effect on NPF yet. They know what NPF is by now. They've got to find a way to make it work with what NPF can and cannot do. We've heard less talk about Braden's. I think Braden's not good, but serviceable. All right. You've got to find a way to measure out the quick pass game and having some success in drop back. And I'll go with Nick on this. I want to see more of the hero ball Willis, but you have to do it within the framework of the pass protection. But there should be 4 or 5 shots a game that play to Willis's strength. And I don't know that we're seeing those. Yes. And so you're kind of handcuffing the guy's strength while he's not mastering the mundane, which is where you really want him to be. And is that really where you want him to be based on what he can do?
Yeah, I think you've got to if you're going to have a player, and unlimited is not the right term. It maybe just not evolved yet, but like you can't have a player who does X really well and just take that off the table altogether, especially when, again, DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley have shown you that down the field, they can make plays.
Yeah, they're taking it off the table altogether because they feel like you have to do X, Y, and Z first before you get to A. And I think maybe you work backwards. You can do some A that gives you opportunities to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, and look, I think the scheme, I've said this all along, I think the scheme has actually done a pretty good job so far, but it can only take you so far, as Chef Rand points out. Against in I don't know what your probability is on Levis not starting this weekend. I don't know where you're at.
He's starting.
That's what I thought. So I'm in this particular matchup, and maybe against the Bills because their defense hasn't been all that special this season yet either. That's where you can lean on the running game and take some deep shots, use your play action, and to your point, I think mix in some pieces that you haven't really mixed in. Like we have the tight ends have been largely, they have not maximized the tight ends.
They're involved in the script. Somebody asked this today, maybe Nick. They're involved in the script early, and then after the script's over, they're not involved.
What I mean, okay, I don't know whose fault that is. I don't know if that's scheme or if
Brian's
that's quarterback,
fault.
but yeah. So we'll see. I think you have a player who, and I've said this before too, his strength is also his weakness and vice versa in his emotion and his passion. It can be his weakness when things are going poorly. It can be his strength when things are going well. And what will get his strength rolling in the right direction? It's a deep shot. You got to give him some opportunities to take deep shots because I think you should be able to lean on running the football against the Colts, at least in this particular matchup on Sunday. So
here's the other thing. I did my podcast keyed around this last week. They came out of the Miami game convinced that they're a good running team. Now, I like what I've seen from Tony Pollard, generally speaking. But even in that game, they ran for 140 yards. It was on 40 carries. Pollard had a 41-yard carry, and he wound up averaging 4. Spears, I think, averaged 2.9. So I understand you're trying to put a bow on things and feel good about yourselves coming out of a win. But if they came out of that feeling like, and this is what I'm talking about, like, did Miami mean something or did it not mean something? Did Miami mean that they kind of discovered how to shape a game and they can run and play action off of that and don't have to throw it really unless they want to? I don't think so at all.
No, I agree.
I mean, maybe they could shape a game again against Indianapolis because Indianapolis is also poor. But when they get to Detroit and Buffalo, they're not going to be able to dictate like that. And to think that they're a good running team when Tony Pollard can carry, I don't remember how many times, 16, 18 times, and have a 4 average based on a 41-yard carry. Well, what do the rest of his carries look like then? I mean, they're not as good a running team as they're talking like they are. They're convincing themselves that they're a good running team.
I think what it is for me, and this may be just a semantic argument here, I don't think they are a great or elite rushing team, but because it's what the offensive line does, it is their better half
at it than anything else.
Then I think it's sort of like, all right, you've got 2 dependable running backs. You've got an offensive line that you're leaning on their strengths. And again, if you were to put it all together, and I think there's a couple other players, I think NWI is one of them, but I think Tyler Boyd is another piece that I'd like to see more active in the offense. If you're gonna lean on the strengths, well, then you're leaning on the offensive line running the ball, you're leaning on play action, and you're leaning on taking shots down the field. That's sort of the game plan. If you're going to lean on the strengths, it doesn't mean those strengths are great or that they're good or they're good enough to even win the game. But if you're going to lean on the strengths, that's what they are. And here's the thing. I want to see, like, if this team and if this coaching staff is worth it, Denard Wilson, Brian Callahan, Bill Callahan, and that sort of brain trust at the top of the coaching formation, if they are worth it, then they have the players with the talent and the pedigree, and they just had 2 weeks. There should be noticeable improvement, in my opinion, at certain positions, in particular the offensive line. If they are worth it, then they will get some work done these over these last 2 weeks. Am I wrong to put that kind of pressure on them?
No, I think you're right. But I also think one thing we haven't factored in here, having a Monday night game going in your bye week really screws your bye week because they had 1 extra day last week and an extra day today. It's really only 2 days. Coaching staff really only got 1 extra day to look at tendencies and self-scout and stuff. It was not as much time as you generally feel like a bye week comes with to resolve some things. And also, like Callahan said, Brian, not as much of a body of work to assess. And so I don't think in that regard, there's as much time and as much information to resolve as we would generally expect. If this bye week was 2 or 3 weeks from now and it came after a Sunday game, I think it would have been more fortuitous.
Only 10 catches so far for Tyler Boyd. You mentioned no targets for
And how many yards after the catch? I mean, if we looked up that metric, it would be 0.
To be fair, that's not why you sign him. You don't sign him.
But when he's a featured guy for you, you're getting nothing. So that's why you want to spin off of that and go to others. And Ridley has 9 catches, 8 catches. So you want that proportion to be significantly different.
Yeah, Ridley has 9, but 19 targets, leads the team with 19 targets.
Yeah, 10 unsuccessful targets is a very high number.
Yes, it is. Pollard
especially since they're not. I mean, the average depth of target is not a giant number there for him.
No, but he's averaging almost 16 yards a catch. A couple of those long passes help that. So, all right, here's the deal. We're going to talk about what the Miami game meant. Stoney already in the comment section. That means the Miami game did not mean jack shit. That's right. I don't mind saying that. I'm okay with that. Chicago game plan was pretty good until they imploded. I agree with that, said Chef Fran. A lot of drops, says John Gall. Again, no relation. Andrew says, what a waste of a good defense to continually find out Levis ain't it. I don't think we're there, guys. We're not there yet with Levis.
I also don't think the defense is that great. I mean, it led up a game-winning drive to the Jets. It didn't play its best at the biggest moments. Looked great against Miami, which is an awful team. Hasn't had a takeaway except when a quarterback threw a backwards pass and the receiver didn't care to pick it up. I think the defense is overrated. I think I put out a chart
this weekend.
Yeah, this weekend is a good one. I put out a chart. I've been doing this for years after the week's play is over. And previously I only put out the yardage stuff, and I've started to add EPA stuff. But being number 1 in yardage, and I added, Jim Schwartz taught me a long time ago, 3rd down and points are the things that he cared about. So I put, how do you rank yardage overall, passing yardage, rushing yardage for offense and defense? And I put 3rd down and scoring. Now the Titans scoring defense is thrown off because they've given up 2 pick sixes, and those go in the books also. And maybe the punt return score also. So you're getting 3 touchdowns in the defensive column that you shouldn't. So that's unfair, technically. But if you look at the EPA numbers, and I'm not a big EPA guy because I don't like expected points allowed. I like actual points allowed, but or actual points expected. But if you look at that stuff, it's not nearly as glowing about the Titans as it's a higher level of thinking.
2 weeks to prepare. Give or take. I know what you're saying about the bye week, but 2 weeks to prepare for the game against the division rival at home, getting your best player healthy against a team that just changed quarterbacks and doesn't have its best offensive player. This has to be an opportunity to make something happen.
Expectation should be high. I
agree. What's
the spread? Have we seen the spread, or somebody throw the spread in the comments?
Yeah, throw the spread up in the comments. I love guessing when I don't know, just to see how close my instincts on the game.
I think it should be Titans 1.5.
I was going to say Titans -1 is what I was going to say. All right. So before we get into what the Miami game meant and sort of a look ahead at the next 4 weeks of the season, critical weeks for the Tennessee Titans, what do we want to see from them? What does it mean? Maybe a little AFC South talk as well. Sinkers Beverages, PK. Sinkers Beverages. Reminder: search Uber Eats. Don't drive and drink, guys. Don't drink and drive. They both work.
Drink and drive is the common way.
Thank you. Search Uber Eats, Sinkers Beverages, type it in, and they'll deliver the booze right to your house. So if you're depressed that Bryce Harper got on base again after 4 straight pitches, you could just Uber Eats, get that bourbon, that whiskey delivered right to your house, like I may or may not have done yesterday on a Sunday afternoon. If you have a great family vacation,
after kids soccer.
Yes, after we were home already. If you have a big family gathering, which is going to be a lot of the next couple of months for everybody that's listening and everybody that's watching, you're all going to have stuff. If you have in-laws, everybody's coming to town and everybody's doing stuff. You're going places. You got Christmas parties at the office. Sinkers Beverages is your place to get all of those ideas, all those gift needs. They've got really good merch, and they've got really good stuff that goes around the drinks, right? If you need a shaker, right? A little martini shaker. If you need koozies, if you need mugs, if you need travel mugs, all the good stuff that sort of makes really good stocking stuffers for like work colleagues or, in-laws that you don't know particularly well, like all that kind of stuff. They got really good ideas up there, and a great wine selection, walk-in beer fridge, the whole deal. But most importantly, they're delivering the booze right to you. So search Uber Eats, Sinkers Beverages, have it delivered right to you. Look, I've
got Titans are getting 1.5. I mean, that is I
would take the points then, I guess.
I never bet on the Titans, and I rarely advise on the Titans, but at Titans 1.5, the only reason I wouldn't touch it is because I feel like it's almost too good. And when I see too good, then I take the other side.
When they're begging you to take something, that's the obvious signal to go the other direction. That's a common Vegas approach. I've also never bet on the Titans, and I'm not starting this weekend. So I don't bet on my teams in general. If I do, I bet against them so that I'm pleasantly surprised, or I win either way. Either my wallet wins or my team wins.
Well, I'd bet on the Phillies. That would be a wise bet because they're going to win. And
why you got to do that?
You can make money.
Why you got to do
the Mets are the Mets.
Have you seen them? They're unbeatable.
They weren't unbeatable last night. I saw a hit to the left field corner. Boom, win. My wife, joyous, happy house.
Oh, your wife's a Phillies fan?
Yeah, she's from Philly.
And she likes you? Oh, my God.
Not that much, no.
Tell me about it. I'm married to one of those, too. Oh, man. She will.
She'll get into the Yanks tonight. I give her that.
My wife does love baseball. She likes baseball more than anything else we watch. She will watch baseball. So when Mark Vientos hit that home run to tie it up at 6 in the top of the 9th, she was like, "This is team of destiny stuff." I was like, "Don't say that yet. We got to pitch the top of the lineup next inning, and our closer's already out. So just chill out." I hate. Here's the other thing, Paul. I don't know if you ever do this with the wife. I don't know. Like she doesn't like watching sports with me because I'll just say the thing that I think is coming or that is happening because of years of like institutional sports knowledge and studying this stuff. And I'll just be like, I literally was like, "Please don't throw a strike to Trey Turner. You've got to get him out. You cannot put Bryce Harper up to the plate with the guy on base. He is going to you have to face him at the top of an inning." And then the very next pitch, Luis Severino throws him a hanger and he hits a 2-run bomb. And she's just like, "I don't like watching games with you. Like, you just tell me what's going to happen."
There's a reason that Severino was allowed to go to Queens.
All right. He's been solid this year. Okay. Settle down. He's much cheaper on a WAR basis than Garrett Cole is. So we'll see.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. Miami. I think by and large, when we talked after the game, and I think basically since the game, I have never really believed, and this is not a knock on the Titans in general, but every now and then you get lucky and you catch a team at the right time. And, you catch Miami at the right time and you sort of execute the way you're supposed to, and without your starting quarterback, and you figured out a way to win the game. And I think there's lots of value in learning how to win and finishing games, especially for a young offense, a young coach, first-time play callers, etc. But I don't think you can apply anything that happened in that game, almost anything that happened in that game, to the future of this team moving forward. Colts, Bills, Lions, Patriots, the next 4. How much are you believing in what happened on that Monday night game being replicable and sustainable over the course of the next month?
Only to the degree that it proved they could beat a bad team, and I think the Colts are a bad team, not that scale bad, but bad. And the Patriots, I think, are a bad team. I think they should go 2-2 over the next 4.
That's what I wrote down.
Which is an improvement, obviously, over going 1-3 in the first 4. But yeah, that game is not replicable in terms of how poor the opponent was and how much the Titans were able to, I'll say again, control the shape of it. They're not going to be able to run as much. They're not going to be able to throw as little. They're not going to be able to get away again with waiting on a turnover that's a giveaway rather than a takeaway. I don't think it was really a growth game beyond learning how to win, and not blowing it. So, I think those things are not insignificant for this team where it is. So I don't mean to dismiss that, but I don't think you can go in the locker room and really say, "Hey, that's one to grow on, boys. We showed a lot of progress in a lot of areas."
Can that be?
I don't know that they did.
Can that be what happens against the Colts on Sunday? Can that be the moment where they do the things they did against the Dolphins? They run the football well. The quarterback, whoever it might be, plays sort of efficient, mistake-free football, not looking to take big shots, maybe throws a couple down the field. Defense does a good job, gets a turnover. They make special teams is improved, I'll say, with Stonehouse and Folk, and they win a game at home in the division and start out 1-0 in the division. Are you looking at that and saying, okay, that is progress from Miami to now?
Well, sure. That'd be more meaningful. Winning 2 in a row is meaningful. Winning a division game is meaningful. Putting some sort of stamp on your home field is meaningful. carrying that to, where are they first, Detroit or Buffalo?
It's at Buffalo the next game, and then at Detroit the following game, and then New England at home. Carrying
that to Buffalo, I think, is meaningful. And Buffalo, as much as you have to like the quarterback, and they know how to win, even though they've been losing. I think that's the right order. You'd rather play Buffalo before Detroit. I think, you'd go in there feeling good about yourself and hopefully having done some things against the Colts that could carry over. So, I could totally see it. Look, I wrote this morning in a piece about how, any rooting for tanking is ridiculous, which I've said over and over, but I put it in a different kind of context. That 6 or 7 wins is still a conceivable thing for this team based on the remainder of its schedule. Now, I don't know that this team is going to sweep the Colts or sweep the Jags. I mean, the Colts and the Jags are looking at the Titans as red meat also. But, the Patriots aren't good. Cincinnati, is not getting it done on a regular basis. You don't want to see Joe Burrow, but they're finding ways to lose. A terrible finish for them yesterday. There are winnable games. And if the Titans won 6 games this year, that's what a hell of a lot of people were predicting for them. If they won 6 games and got progressively better as this season went, as miserable as people are right now, as little hope as there is and all of that, that would be about what most people expect.
I don't want to ask what happens if this team is 1-3 in this stretch, because it means they probably lose a game they should not, although they are technically an underdog against the Colts. But the Colts have lost both of their division games. They just got torched by Trevor Lawrence. They're playing with a backup quarterback, don't have Jonathan Taylor. They're on the road.
They've not won in 10 years in Jacksonville.
That's a remarkable. Doug Peterson, actually, and we'll get to this, he's 4-1 against the Colts and 3-1 against the Titans. You can make some money in this league if you're going to go 7-2 against
division games
in your division. What I find interesting, though, is I found myself leaving the Miami game with some optimism about the things that they learned, to your point about got to learn how to win a game, and that's most important, step number 1. But that the optics and the narrative coming out of there about Will Levis, fair or not for him, was as bad as it could have possibly been. What he needs is sort of, even if it's unfair or even inaccurate, he needs a narrative game, and this is how I see it. If I was writing fiction, this is how I would see it playing out this weekend, which is they play in the same kind of game the Colts just played in, where they're in a shootout against Jacksonville. The running game for Jacksonville, Tank Bigsby goes over 100+ yards. Trevor Lawrence has a career day, but he does it with a little, you can tell he's still not 100%, right? He gets labeled as this guy who can play through injury, and he figures out a way to make a few big plays. Ridley and Hopkins make a few big plays. They win a shootout, so the offense checks a box. The quarterback earns some points for being tough and delivering a back-to-back win, winning in the division over a rival that everyone hates. That may not even be the reason they win the game, but there's a narrative around him that begins to form in the positive sense, and he really desperately needs something like that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it would be really good if the Monday story included that. Maybe if it's not the headline, but it's a sub-headline at the very least, that Will Levis did something very good. Maybe his game wasn't great, but he threw a miraculous throw or, led a clutch drive or something. Will Levis could really use a good narrative next week coming out of this game. You're 100% on.
Maybe it's a rushing play on a 3rd and 4 where he's clearly got the shoulder that's been dealing with all game, but he dives forward and gets a first down. They win the game on a field goal,
and his shoulder's not a problem.
And he's healthy.
Here's the thing too. Kurt Warner's helped him a lot with these breakdowns of the 2 bad interceptions the last 2 weeks and how they're understandable interceptions, complex things on quick short throws where there's a reason for some grace. Some grace. And Aaron Rodgers just threw the exact same sort of interception in London against Minnesota that Levis threw in Miami against the Dolphins, where he didn't see a defensive lineman dropping into coverage on a quick throw, which is great. And I understand it all. I've said that online. The thing is, I understand what he's looking at. He's not looking at defensive line for coverage there, the 8 or the 7 that he's looking at, all of that. In the moment, though, he is allowed, and Aaron Rodgers is allowed to see that guy come into that window. All right. He's predetermined, as far as I'm concerned, that he's throwing to Hopkins there. This is basically what Warner says. He's throwing to Hopkins there as long as this one defender goes to the flat. Okay. So he reads the defender and the defender goes to the flat. But he's allowed to see that defensive lineman come into the picture and decide not to throw it. Yeah. So that's that. A lot of people, I'm fighting with this one guy on Twitter who's basically saying, as long as that defender goes to the flat, he's allowed to throw that interception every time. This guy's making it like they shouldn't even discuss it in the meeting room.
Like it should be an interception.
Right. Yeah. Like all is forgiven. Like you could throw that interception every time and we're never going to discuss it because it's a surprise that that defensive lineman goes there and it's not supposed to happen. So if it happens, all is forgiven. And I'm saying he's allowed, at least in time, to discover that, oh my goodness, a defensive lineman is surprisingly showing up in that window and I shouldn't throw it. And I think that's the next stage of progress, right? So he went from 2 ridiculous turnovers in the first 2 games to 2 more understandable conventional interceptions in the next 2 games. And the next thing is to recognize something and decide not to do something.
I agree.
And I'd love it's even if that's what we're talking about, and that would be secondary, right? That might not be something we notice in the moment. That could be something that one of the film guys is putting out on Monday, a Herndon or somebody saying, hey, look, he actually pulled it down and went to a second read here. And that incompletion was actually a thing of beauty because he did see something here and avoided it.
It's funny. Somebody said, John says Jordan Love and Kyler did the same thing. Aaron Rodgers is playing terribly, says Andrew. And honestly, Jordan Love's interception was very Will Levis week 1 or 2.
Oh, it's awful.
Yesterday.
It's
one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. And so the point is that even players who come off really hot streaks that earn huge contracts can still make really dumb decisions, but you got to show progress. And so far we've seen a little bit of progress. I'm curious. I view this next month, Colts, Bills, Lions, Patriots. The first month of the season in general for all teams is sort of like this learning process, figure out who we are, because we forget about what every team did in the first month pretty quickly. The second month of the season is not really like defining the team and who you're going to be, but it's sort of building the things that will define the team in the third quarter of the season, which is where really all the work gets done. Third and fourth quarter is where all the work gets done. This next 4 games, the reason 2-2 is so critical is that you could see the progress, you could see the building, and you could see the foundational stuff that needs to change in order to then find success in the third and fourth quarter of the season, which is the month of mostly November and December, a little bit of January. So it's not going to define who you are, but man, if you go 1-3 again, and we're looking at a 2-6 team going into mid-November, I don't know what you will hang your hat on at that point. That's my concern about the team. So I think that they have to. This is a very, very big month. It's not going to define the season, but it's a huge month in terms of where the franchise is headed trajectory-wise.
Yeah, well, what you hang your hat on if you're 2-6 is improvement. I mean, I think it's the same thing you're hanging your hat on if you have a better second quarter. But I do agree with you, like, especially for this team, the first 4 are kind of the ship coming out of harbor. And now you've adjusted the wheel. And we know for a big ship, it takes a while for that ship to turn. And so now we see how the turn goes. And, there's a chance that, you split here or,
I feel like that's a victory.
Yeah, I think that's a victory too. And you could even conceivably split and pull one off. I do think this team, in a best case scenario, at some point steals one the way the Bears game was kind of stolen from them, from their stupidity, that they play a tight game against somebody they're not supposed to play against and win based on somebody else's mistake. They're a long way from feeling like a team that gets that. And that more likely comes in the last half, the third quarter or the fourth quarter. But I won't be surprised if that comes. I'm not ready to write them off entirely. They could be an ugly team that wins 6 or 7, again, which is kind of what I expected. A third place team that probably win, I thought slightly better than last year's team, if not by record, by feel.
And what's funny is you can go the other direction with this too, as Andrew has just done. If you get to 2-3 with a win over the Colts, a game that we both believe that they have a very good chance to win, if they win that game and they're at 2-3, all of a sudden you're going into the Buffalo game with a lot of juice, with a lot of energy, thinking, all right, you look at the AFC. Like you started the show with some of the teams that are at the top, but there's not a lot of teams with winning. I think there's 2 teams with 4 wins in the entire conference. So I mean, there is a lot of, you can catch teams quickly in this league, especially in this current AFC. Now, can you do that with Houston in the division? I don't know. I don't know if you can do that. I think
and those 4 teams I opened talking about seems like they've all kind of there have been a lot of games amongst Kansas City, Baltimore, Houston, and Buffalo. So, I don't know how much of that is left. I'd have to look more closely at the schedule, but certainly some home field stuff has already been determined among those teams. The Bills aren't playing. If the Bills recover and do what they should do and get in the playoffs, they're not going to be home a lot.
I know you used a cruise ship metaphor. I feel like there's also like a cooking metaphor here, where if the first month of the season is like the recipe and preparation and doing the shopping, like the second month of the season is your like mixing and your baking and your cooking and you're smoking a brisket. It's the actual like the first chunk of the smoke, and then you get to enjoy things in the fourth quarter. And I don't know exactly what the third.
You're inviting the Let Rand cook people in. When
that's not what I was.
And that's not a place I want to go.
That was unintentional. John says bad analogy.
I mean, if we're getting into all these different things, you look like you're at the barber shop. That looks like a poncho in which you get your hair cut.
Sounds good. That's fine. I'm okay with that. I am so glad that I do not take my fashion advice from you, my friend. That's all I got to say. That's all I got to say. Okay.
Stick it with a collar. I like it.
Look, there's no hat and a collar.
Very good.
I got to go to an event at Bridgestone as soon as we're done. So
an event.
It has nothing to do with you. It's nothing to do with you. Hey, okay. So shameless promotion here. Lower Broad Hockey, subscription-based community for Nashville Predators fans. Adam Vingan, Michael Gallagher, Emma Lingen, myself. I got a big story coming on the future of Pred's broadcast situation, and I got to go get some confirmation on some quotes, Paul. So just
go report. It's interesting that you feel to report you need to wear a collar, but to broadcast you don't.
No, I don't.
It's wrong.
Well, I got to go do the whole you got to kiss babies and shake hands and do the whole thing.
Stoney likes the nautical and culinary metaphors. It is. I was thinking more like a Titanic ship, but you took it to cruise ship, and now we've got the food on the 7th deck, whatever it is.
Yeah, and if you've ever been on a cruise, I've only been on like 2, and I'm not a huge cruise guy. The food on the cruise is sometimes I'm very, very sad about the amount of food that gets thrown away, which cannot be that high quality. And if you want the real food on the cruise ship, you got to pay a ton of extra money. So I'm not really sure we want our cruise ships and our food metaphors mixed together, just like I don't know if we want the food and the cruise ship mixed together in the first place.
And now I'm thinking Love Boat. And
there you go.
Go.
Paul, would you ever do? We ever do a stash? Will you ever do the mustache? Does the wife?
I do. Sometimes when I have a bigger beard than this and I'm shaving the whole thing off, I do a thing where I just have the mustache off to get great laughs from my family, and then I go finish the shave. It's like me wearing like a fedora in a hat store, whatever I put on. My wife never laughs harder than when I try on hats like that. I'll send her a picture, a selfie in a hat like that. Nothing gets a better laugh than me in some kind of weird hat like that.
Well, I'm glad that we
never
learned.
Then purchased.
I'm glad we learned your anti-hat stance comes from
I like a
personal
dressy
PTSD.
hat like that. My dad, wore like Bing Crosby hats and stuff. It just didn't translate to me looking good in them, apparently.
Sinkers Beverages, paulkarski.com. Go to both those places. AFC South, like Houston does feel like they are in control of the division. I don't know if anybody can catch them.
That was a big win for them.
That
was a very big identity win.
The Colts are already 0-2 in the division. If they lose to the Titans, they go to 0-3. Of course, leading the league in interceptions, both the Titans and the Colts. That'll be productive to watch on Sunday.
I hate the scheduling where they're going to have played 3 division games and the Titans will have only played 1. They need to pace things out where divisions are similar.
So all these teams, bottom half of the league in points allowed on defense, including Houston, which is Tennessee's actually first in the group right now in terms of points allowed on defense. Two defenses that are very, very good in yards per play, which is Tennessee and Houston, which I believe are second and fourth in the NFL in yards per play on defense. Both Jacksonville and Indianapolis at the bottom of the league. Jacksonville has lost 3 one-score games. Generally speaking, those numbers tend to come back to even 50-50. You don't normally have an entire season where you go like 1-7 in one-score games or 7-1 in one-score games. Those things tend to progress to the mean there, or regress to the mean, I should say. So what Brian Thomas is something I was wrong about. I thought he was sort of he wasn't deserving of his draft stock, but he's been very, very good for Jacksonville. What were you right about, and what's been unexpected in the South in your opinion? Just real quickly here.
Well, early I saw that Mitchell, the rookie with the Colts, was missed by Richardson in the first game. That he was wide open a couple times and Richardson missed him. And I traded for him in a fantasy league. I traded Gabe Davis for him straight up because I thought he was going to be a big playmaker. And now I'm reading a whole bunch of stuff about how he is so afraid of contact that he pulls up on some of these open things. It's not a big loss. These were bench guys for me. But I mean, if he's wide open, he's good.
If he's going
to get hit, he shies away from stuff. I think Jacksonville's more talented than its record, but that's one of 2 places where you're reading about a guy potentially losing the locker room. And those stories don't come easy. Guys talking about the coach potentially losing the locker room. That's a hard story to get in Jacksonville. The second place that story has come out is a really hard place to get that story. It's New England. And that's a first-year coach you're talking about. So when Gerard Mayo, that story's coming out, that's a tough one. Yeah. But that's a bad situation in Jacksonville. I've overestimated them. I thought Lawrence would finally fall in. They're bad. Houston, I think, is as legitimate as people thought. I thought maybe they could come back to the pack, except now Nico Collins went from day to day to week to week. And that's a big deal.
They did get Tank Dell back, so they should have some depth behind Nico Collins, but he's a very, very good player. Mixon's been out. They've got some depth behind him. I just think Houston, if they just don't screw it up, should coast to a division championship. They're maybe not the 2 seed that I predicted them to be, but they should coast to a home playoff game. And I honestly, the thing that I might change here, I had Jacksonville 2, Colts 3, Titans 4. Titans could easily, if things go well, finish number 2 in the division. It may not be better than their record.
Number 2 in the division could be a terrible record.
Yes. Their record may not change. I'm not sure I've changed any opinion about their record, but they could easily win a couple of games. To your point about the locker room, they've got 3 against the teams that have bad locker rooms right now, apparently. So if you can win a couple of those games, you could easily finish second in the division. So,
all 3 of them could be drafting in the top 12.
Top 10, top 8.
I mean, that'd be something to have 3. When's the last time 3 teams from the same division since realignment were drafting in the top 8? I would bet never.
A lot of ties coming for Jacksonville, Indianapolis, and Tennessee. That would be bad. That'd be bad. Just a lot of ties in the division. That'd be bad football. Okay. All right.
Josh Downs. Chef Rand says Josh Downs is their best receiver, and Josh Downs is a very good receiver. I like him a lot.
Pittman's pretty solid. I like. They do totally different things, but I think Pittman's pretty good. We'll see. Joe Flacco has this weird ability to sort of step in and sort of maximize the people around him. He did it last year. Resurgence. He did it in one and a half games so far. So leave it to a backup quarterback to come into Nissan Stadium and get a win.
Titans have a great history against Johnny Manziel, against Ryan Leaf, against Malik Willis. Yep. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I think they should and will win this weekend, and I don't usually throw out a Titans prediction, but I wouldn't be surprised if they lose to Joe Flacco.
Nothing would surprise me with this football team at any point during the course of the season. PaulKuharsky.com, Sinkers Beverages. Check out all the other great shows across the 440 Sports Network, of course, covering all things SEC, Tennessee Titans. You got the huge Vanderbilt win. We're going to have great content for you this week on the platform covering that big Vanderbilt win. Nashville Predators, of course, the gold standard, Lower Broad Hockey. You got all that great stuff. Go sign up for the subscription service there, lowerbroadhockey.com. Nick and I will be back on Thursday with a little announcement for you guys, and we'll preview more of the Colts matchup. For Paul, I am Braden. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Have a great week, everybody.